it's kind of gone downhill from there in some cases. Okay? Now, these next two things we're going to talk about, and I believe Seminary and Luke hit on these. That's not good. Do you guys remember Luke talking about those?
No.
Okay, I couldn't remember if he did or not. Act and potency. Okay, these are two more philosophical terms, but we've probably used these terms before and they mean similar things to what I'm talking about. I am actually standing right here. Okay? Thank you again. Yeah. So like act is actually doing something, it's an action, it's a, you know, something's happening is kind of what we think of it normally, right? But think of act as being complete. I am completely standing here. I could be standing there, I could be standing there, I could be standing on the table, but I'm actually standing right here. Okay? Potency is really related to act. Potency sounds like potential, right? I could potentially be standing there, but I'm not. I'm actually standing here. Could potentially be standing there, but I'm not. I'm standing here, right? Now, if I want to, I could potentially stand there. Now I'm actually standing here. Okay? I could potentially be standing there again, but I'm actually standing here. Jack.
It's like a solid line versus a dotted line.
How so?
That's how I saw it. It's
Okay.
like that when you're solid line, that usually shows that you're in the process of doing something or you've gotten to that something. And then a dotted line is what if you were there or if you are planning on doing that.
Okay, okay, gotcha. So, you got a marker, right? This marker is here. It could also be here or here or here or here or here, right? It's actually here. Could be all of those places. Now it's actually there. How did it get there?
You push it forward.
I moved it, right? I moved it. That's the key. Get from, I should have, right, these are flipped around. That's gonna drive me insane. I'm gonna flip them around. To get from potency to act, you have to move. Something has to move, right? Okay, so we actually, so this chair is here, could be over there. Is it gonna move on its own?
No.
It's not just gonna suddenly pop up there, right? I mean, it's just not gonna happen. Why do we know it's not gonna happen?
Because it's an inanimate object.
And do inanimate objects move on their own?
Not all.
Like some of them move on their own.
Cars.
But do cars move on their own, or do cars move them because something is driving them?
Like the cars that Google uses to like get street view. Yes, but who programmed the Google to do that?
Yep. So every inanimate object you guys have seen, that any person has ever seen, cannot move on its own, right? Hunter.
Could you count a tree as an animate object?
No, technically you can't. Okay, so animate objects. This is kind of on the side, but it's still worth knowing. What does animate mean?
It can move
It can move, okay.
on its own. It has forms
On its
of
own.
locomotion.
Okay.
What about atoms? What about those molecules that go zipping around? They do it on their own.
Zip, zap, zoop.
So, animate comes from the word anima, which is Latin for soul. Okay? So things that are living, animate objects, people, animals, plants, have souls. Okay? Now, humans are the only ones that have immortal souls, but dogs have souls that die with their bodies. Plants have souls that die with their bodies. Those souls are just called mortal souls. Ours are immortal, right? So to animate something, to bring life to it, that's what the soul does. Okay? That's why only God can give you a soul. Right? So he does it with puppies too. Only God can give that soul. Kind of crazy to think about. So, inanimate objects mean they have no soul. So, we know inanimate objects are not going to move ever. We know that something has to move them. Okay? Something has to move an object from potency to act, to actuality. That's what I'm going to put. Philosophy, they call it act, but that gets confusing, so we're going to call it actuality. Makes more sense. So if I've got here pot of water, okay? This is at room temperature. What's room temperature? 668, is that
Our
right?
room temperature 70.
Why is it negative?
It's not negative.
It's a dash.
It's a dash.
That'd be a very cold room.
Okay.
That's
a
like
morgue.
room
There we go.
temperature on like
The planet
Pluto.
Venus, right? Okay, so this is room temperature water, 68. Its act, 68, right? It could potentially be any other temperature, right? Could go down to 32. What's 32? Freezing, so it could become ice. It isn't, but it could be. It could also be boiling. Boiling is
I almost said 128, but
212, is that right? Is that boiling?
Seems right.
So we're gonna
Sounds
pretend
good.
that's boiling, okay? It is actually 68 degrees. It has the potential to become 212, or has the potential to become 32. If the room stays 68 degrees, will that water change temperature
no.
on its own?
It can, but if the sun got in the right position, it's possible that it could get hotter, but
Right, but can the water just sitting there decide or just move itself to become warmer or colder?
No.
just got a floating pan.
Right. So, well, let's say the sun moves though. Sun moves, sun starts shining on the water. Does the water get warmer? Why?
Very, very
the sun's
slowly.
hot. It's very hot.
So what moved the water?
The
sun.
The sun, exactly, right? The sun moved the water, okay? Now,
Technically the earth, because the sun doesn't move.
no, the sun moved the water to get hotter. In other words, to think of movement, the sun acted on the water to make the temperature go higher, right? Sure, the earth might have moved in position, but it was the sun that did the heating, okay? So, if we want to boil this water, how would we boil it?
Turn the stove on.
Turn the stove on, we'd raise the
Put
temperature,
it in the microwave.
put it in the microwave. Hunter?
Cook an egg on the sidewalk.
You could cook an egg on the sidewalk, so the heat from the sidewalk moves the egg to cooking temperature, right? So let's build
Venus.
a fire.
Venus is close to the sun, right?
Yeah, 'cause it's not a gas planet, so
Yeah, just go to Venus.
All right,
just go to Venus and slap a stove on.
we have created a fire under the pot of water, okay? Now, hey, that is the best fire you're going to
I'm sorry.
get. You know what wood I use for that fire?
The pine.
The pine tree, yeah, that's right.
No, it's a poetry.
Oh, sorry, the
Oh my
poetry,
gosh,
sorry.
bro,
It's a
you
very-
turned me into
very
a house,
versatile,
and now
yeah.
I'm lit on. I'm now on
Is the
fire.
handle for the pot also?
There's also a handle for the pot, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
This is abuse.
If this fire is only 150 degrees, not a very hot fire, how hot can it make that water?
Hotter.
What's that? 150? 150?
Yeah.
150? Does anybody think it's gonna make it colder? Like, not colder, but like, think it'll only get it to like 140? Anybody think it can get it to 200?
I mean, if you left it there long enough, yeah, it would go to 150.
Right, but can it get it hotter than 150? Who thinks it can get hotter than 150?
I mean, if the fire started picking up, yeah.
Well, just remember that it's just at 150 degrees, right? Just 150 degrees. Will it get that water hotter than 150 degrees?
I don't remember this lesson.
Joseph?
I mean, it's already at 68 degrees.
Right?
And 68 plus 150 is 218.
That's not quite how it works.
Yeah.
You're not combining the heats, right? Not combining the heats, okay? No, that fire is not gonna make the water any hotter, okay? That fire is only gonna get that water to 150 degrees. It'll never get it beyond that. Think of it this way, right? I can move, this marker has the potential to be all the way down here, right? I'm gonna be the one to move it. Now, without moving, yes, I could move, but pretend I can't move. How far can I get that marker? I can only get it that
I mean,
far,
if you pushed it really hard, yeah, you could throw it off.
right? That's what I wrote my seminary thesis on. So that's like 12 lessons. But yeah, you're right, I could. We bring physics into this too, which, yeah, that's a really good point, right? But for what we're talking about right here, I can't push it all the way to the end, right? Now, yes, I can move, but we're not talking about that. I only have the power to get it there, okay? So the key for this whole thing to understand is one, in order for something to move, to go from potency, right? It's in potency now toward the active 212. You have to have a hot enough fire to get that up there, okay? So you can only give what you have, okay? You can't give more than what you have. That fire at 150 can't give more heat than it's got, okay? If Emily has $100 and she wants to give it away to somebody, she can't give Melissa 110, right? You can only give, if I want to give somebody this marker, I can't give them two, I only have one. Now if I reach up here and grab another one, now I can give it to you, right? So it's really, really important to understand those things. You can't give what you don't have, and something can't move on its own. Okay? Is that making sense so far?
Yes.
Any questions so far? Other than why are we talking about this? Not yet? Okay. Well, you guys are farther ahead than I thought we'd be. What time is it? 7:30. Okay. If we know these things, that was all I really had prepared for tonight. But we still have half an hour, so go ahead.
Let's play a
Bum,
game.
bum.
Almost. We're going to take a little bit of these conclusions first, okay?
Bum, bum.
Knowing that, movement, potency to act, four causes, you can't give what you don't have. So if we've got, I should have brought some, but we don't. I didn't bring some, okay? So we've got a series of dominoes. You guys ever lined up dominoes and knocked them over?
Yes. I haven't done it in a while, but yeah.
It's kind of cool, right? Okay. We've got dominoes. All right. Imagine where we've got this huge line of dominoes. All right. So these dashes means it's going that way a long way. Dashes mean it's going that way a long way. We can't see the beginning. We can't see the end of this line of dominoes. Okay. We can't see it. What we can see is these dominoes are falling up down. Okay. These dominoes are falling into each other. We have no idea why. We're just looking at them. They're falling down. Boom, 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 boom. We go back as far as we can see. We see dominoes that have fallen down, and we go that way. We see dominoes that haven't fallen down, but will fall down. Right? Knowing what we know about this, did these dominoes, did these dominoes just start falling down one day? Knowing what we know.
Not on their own.
Not on their own, right?
Maybe a gust of wind.
Maybe a gust of wind.
Or
Maybe
some
somebody
person
else.
that wanted to ruin all our progress, making
Right.
the world's longest
Right.
line of dominoes.
But the key is, these things didn't fall over on their own. Right? Something started them somewhere. We don't know what that is. We don't know what that may be. But to begin with, something started it. Okay? Now, the other thing we can say, can a domino set itself up?
Also, no.
Also no. So what's the second conclusion? Well, okay, let's write these conclusions down. First, can domino knock itself over?
No.
The answer is no. So our conclusion is,
Not by itself.
right, which means
Gust of wind or someone else.
something knocked it over. Something pushed over the first one, right?
Not the poetry.
Not the poetry. The dominoes are made of the poetry.
Wooden dominoes.
They do make wooden dominoes.
Turn it into math.
Now they're
What if I said, well, the dominoes have just been going on forever?
Well, who put all those dominoes everywhere that it kept going forever?
Okay, so question 2.
Ooh.
Who or what?
Not the poetry.
Because it could have been a robot made
It's
by
a
a
wooden
person.
dominoes.
You could
That
have a
means
domino
they can
laying
float.
robot that constantly places them at the exact moment that the dominoes are falling over. So it's just an infinite circle of dominoes.
True, but what set up the robot?
A person.
Ah, see, so something in there
Mark
is in charge of that, right? So, but talk to me again. What about the idea that the dominoes go back forever? Does that work? Does that solve our question? Dominoes have just been going forever. Why not? Based on what we've talked about, based on what we know about this, why do we know that this infinite line of dominoes can't possibly work? And
Because dominoes are inanimate, so they have to have something to act upon it.
exactly. Right? We know that something has to move those dominoes. Dominoes just don't set themselves up. Dominoes just don't randomly start falling over. Now the crazy thing is, back in the 700s, guys, people tried to get around God by saying, yeah, dominoes just set themselves up. Have you guys heard the phrase, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound?
Yeah.
It's kind of a joke now, right? It's kind of a
Yeah.
fun joke for us. This was like a real debated thing at colleges in the 1700s and 1600s. People actually had like big fights about this question. To us, it's kind of crazy, right? But they were trying to answer this question without God. Jack.
Can I say a little fun fact about medieval times
Sure.
and alchemy? There was, I forgot his name, but there was this, I think, Chinese emperor and he did the terracotta warriors, he did that stuff,
Oh yeah.
and he wanted to live forever. So he had his alchemist cook up a little potion so he could live forever. But it was a mixture of a bunch of stuff and mercury. So he died, and ironically his tomb has I think waterfalls of mercury that they put in there. Because he tried to he made a little model of his town, his city that he has, and he put like a mercury thing. It's like, and he has like a good army and stuff, but then he drank mercury and died. And yeah, that's
See?
why I think we moved away from alchemy.
No, this is a good point, right? Like, was his final end, his final cause to live forever on Earth? No. What he tried to do, he tried to, but he screwed it up. Right? Right? Okay, so we know, we can tell two things from this. Something has to knock the dominoes down, something has to set the dominoes up. Okay? Now, let's take this to a bigger thing than just the dominoes, right? The dominoes makes sense. Okay, fine. You could have somebody, some person out there setting up dominoes, right? Let's go bigger than that. All right, let's go humans. Okay, let's go people, right? You've got, this person comes from this dad and mom, comes from
Brazil.
this dad and mom, comes from this dad, forgot their body.
That is now the arrow.
Yeah, right? All the way back in time. We know this, right? We know people come from parents. Has anybody ever just popped out of the ground? Well, I mean, Adam kind of popped out of the ground, but God
Yeah.
made Adam pop out of the ground, right?
And Eve
I
was
don't-
made out of
wait,
Adam.
Is Adam and Eve, is that more of like a, because Catholics do believe in evolution, is Adam and Eve like a little bit of that is like the story, like God did create Adam and Eve, but like was it in a different way? Like
So-
Eve wasn't actually
Yeah.
just grown out of Adam's rib.
So this
Wasn't it really?
is a bit of a side story, but we got some time, so real quick. Catholics believe in forms of evolution, right? They don't necessarily believe in Darwin's version of evolution, because Darwin thinks, you guys all know Charles Darwin, right? The guy that made this evolutionary theory.
Survival of the fittest.
Right. He claims, if I understand correctly, that things kind of change themselves. They adapt on their own. What we will continue to learn is that things can't really change themselves. If we could, I would make myself about a couple inches taller, but I can't. Right? We can't just all of a sudden will ourselves to become stronger.
It's because I think the main part of evolution is that they were born that way, and the mutations is the main thing that cause the creatures to be different over time. It's not just, okay, I'm already here. You know what? I want 3 arms, and then
Right, but
Yeah, that's someone else.
But you're talking
Hey
about
God, before you set me in the womb,
It's
can I have like
Yeah.
3
Offspring
arms?
was
Can I be
born
super
with like a
tall?
mutation, making it like slightly different.
An extra
Sure.
finger on my wrist.
sure, but that's true within a species, right? Within a species, but cross species is where it gets funny. Cross species is where it starts to break down, right? That's part of the philosophy stuff that we've looked at a little bit. We'll continue to look at, right? Like an acorn will always produce an oak tree. It won't produce a pine tree, right? It won't happen. Now the oak tree may produce a slightly taller oak tree, but it won't produce a pine tree. Now, that doesn't mean evolution isn't a thing. It just means God's hand is in evolution a lot more than the scientific community wants it to be. Does that make sense? So back to the question of Adam and Eve, I'm content to let the Bible tell us the story that God made Adam and Eve. If we find out one day that that wasn't the case, okay, right? It's no big deal. But for our line of people, we have never known a world really without people. Yeah, they talk about a world without people, but we've never seen it. We've never been there. We've never experienced it. There's never been, even the Adam and Eve story, there's never been a person that all of a sudden just existed out of nothing, right? They come from something. Something causes them. So you can kind of apply the same thing to from the dominoes in a sense, right? I didn't will myself to be in existence. Something else brought me about, right? Same goes for my parents and their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents. Does this go back forever? Well, based on our domino thing, there has to be a starting point, right? Even if we claim, what time we got? Okay. Even if we go strictly with scientific evolution, right? People came from monkeys came from something else came from a fish, and so on, right? There's a starting point somewhere, right? Even if you want to claim the Big Bang Theory, which makes sense, God said, let there be light, and boom, there was light. To me, that sounds like a Big Bang, right?
Boom.
So, even if you claim that started maybe that knocked down the first domino, but something had to start that. So in other words, things have a beginning and an end, so to speak. Things can't move themselves. I couldn't create myself. That's been the way it's always been. Which means there has to be something else out there that's doing it. Now, we're not proving necessarily with this, guys. We're not necessarily proving God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Okay?
It could have been. We didn't necessarily prove that our God did it.
Exactly.
It
Not
could
yet.
have been something else.
Right. It
But
could be.
We have our reasons to come to that.
Right. So we're not working on proving God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit exists yet. We're just working on proving some sort of super omnipresent, omnipowerful being that we all call God exists. It may look like the Star Wars Force, right? But we're proving something outside of ourselves exists. That's where we're starting. The next two lessons, we're going to dive into that a little bit more, and that'll start to make a little more sense, hopefully. Any questions so far? Ladies from the back row, any questions? The front row is kind of dominated tonight, which is fine. No, that's not a bad word. I don't mean that bad.
I know.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, dominated the conversation. Joseph.
So earlier you would say like an acorn will always grow into an oak tree. It won't grow into like a pine tree. Like evolution takes like a really long time.
True.
So like just
Like a lizard, I'm sorry, a fish doesn't instantly just, a lizard. It's
You're right.
like all over a while they get a mutation and they get a little foot, and then over that time they get
But
four
what
feet.
causes the mutation?
God.
it's like yeah.
Something has to cause that mutation, right? Something has to move it,
The mixing of DNA and genetics.
right? In other words,
AKA God.
all this stuff isn't happening in a vacuum, right? Something has to move the marker, right? Now we're messing with food and animals right now as humans. We're altering some of these things so that they grow bigger and faster and stronger, right?
Mhm.
That is evolution in a sense.
Didn't they clone a sheep too?
But we're the ones causing the evolution, right?
We're doing it.
We're the ones messing with and doing things. That's a different debate if we should do that or not. But no, the point is, we're moving those animals, those plants, to become something bigger or something different.
Is there a debate on cloning yet?
There's always
The
a debate
first
on
clone
something.
sheep.
Like, did we create that sheep?
Well, you can say, again, did we create the sheep? If we cloned it from that stuff, we put all the stuff together. We moved it, right? We moved whatever that sheep DNA was. We moved it to the right point where it would start to grow, right? But my argument would be, if it's growing, if it has a soul, we couldn't create that. God had to put the soul in it.
Yeah.
So
So I guess the main question is, does God want us to be doing that?
Right. All right, so you all know what the four causes are?
Yes.
Material cause is
The thing it's
What
made
it's
of.
made
what it's
of.
made of. Formal cause is
What it looks like.
perfect. The efficient cause is,
Who
Who made it?
and the final cause is
What its
Final purpose.
exactly. Actuality is
Actuality is like where you are.
it's a state of completeness toward a very specific end, right? Like, so if I'm sitting, I'm actually sitting. I'm like at a state of completeness when it comes to sitting, right?
You've done it.
Now, if I'm doing this, I'm not really completely sitting, right?
Like your legs
have
are
the
in a
boots.
position of sitting, but you're
Exactly.
You're not 100%.
So I'm not
right?
acting as a sitting person yet. Now I am.
You were in a state of completeness for like pseudo.
Exactly, right?
Give a hover.
So Joseph just brought up a really good point. Along this line of potency, you're at the act of being at this point on the line, but potentially here, right? When you move here, you're at the act of being that point on the line, but potentially here. So it's a very good point. All right, and you can't give what you don't got. Right? Those are your takeaways. Next two, which are October, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Second and third week of October.
Second and third week of October, we'll talk about movement, specifically movement, proving God. The second time in October, we'll talk about specifically that efficient cause for proving God. Okay? Is this stuff interesting?
To an extent, yes.
It gets a little mind bending after a while. We were all sitting there in philosophy for those first couple weeks, just looking at our professors like, what are you talking about? Why are we talking about this? Why are we reading this? But once all the pieces get put together, hopefully they'll sit there and be like, oh, okay. Now this makes sense. Jack.
Wait, no, I can ask the question at the end.
Okay. That's all I've got for tonight.
All right.